I would like to welcome everybody to our webinar today. We want to talk a little bit about the Middle East, and I would like to give you an overview of the conditions that are currently available in the Middle East, the innovation framework in which companies nowadays act, and I would like to talk a little bit about how to tackle innovation management in the best way possible in the Middle East. We will talk about motivating employees in the right way, and we will talk about some strategic elements. Great, so let me start by giving you an overview of the agenda. As I said, just a brief introduction of myself. This will be followed by a small overview of the experience that HYPE has gotten in the last 5 years. We have been working for over 5 years now in the Middle East with clients, and I would like to share with you the experiences that we have gathered here. Following to that, we will talk about motivational aspects that are special in the Middle East, how to motivate employees, how to motivate citizens if you are working for a government entity maybe. And that is a little bit unique. There are some small differences if you compare the cultural aspects of the region in comparison to European or Western societies. Following to that, I would like to give out some recommendations. If you want to work in the Middle East in context of innovation, how to set up innovation management programs properly in the Middle East, and what aspects have worked for clients we have been working with in the past. Last but not least, we'll have a Q&A session, as Diana mentioned. So if you have any questions in the meantime, please just write them down in the question section of GoToWebinar, and we will have a short discussion on them at the end of today's webinar. Great, so let me just give you a brief overview of myself. My name is Khattab. I'm a strategic consultant at HYPE. I've been working for over 5 years now in the innovation and idea management space. I've been working primarily in the EMEA market, so for European companies and especially for companies in the Middle East, for private and public organizations. I've been working as a project manager for over 3 years, and I've worked for organizations like Saudi Aramco or Gasco, which are some of the biggest natural resources organizations in the Middle East. And 2 years ago, I started to work on strategic elements of innovation management, and over a year now, for over a year now, I've been working as a strategic consultant now at HYPE, and I help clients to align innovation programs to organizational strategic elements to focus on the business value that innovation management programs should achieve. And I also help organizations to train the innovation managers and other entities that play a role in innovation management programs. Here, just a brief overview of our client portfolio, not specifically on the Middle East, but just to give you an overview where does our experience come from. As you can see, we are not specialized on any kind of industry. HYPE is working with all kinds of clients from all kinds of industries, public and private, and we are not focusing on any company sizes. So we're working with small companies, but also with medium-sized and the larger blue-chip organizations. Good. So who is this webinar for? So who is the right audience here, and and who should be listening in today? So the webinar is focused on people who are currently running innovation management programs. So if you are maybe an innovation manager in an organization in the Middle East, then this is the webinar for you. Or if you are involved in innovation activities in the Middle East, this is perfectly suited for you. If you are looking to launch an innovation program in the near future, maybe in 6 months, in 12 months, hopefully this webinar will deliver some value for you. Or if you are interested in understanding the Middle East a little bit better before you roll out any kind of innovation activities, hopefully this webinar will help you to get some insight into the Middle East. Great. So let's start by just giving you an overview of the conditions that are currently available in the Middle East. I would like to start with economic insights. So what do we know about the Middle East on an economic level? Basically, the majority of economies nowadays in the Middle East is still or are still based on natural resources, mainly oil and to some extent also gas. And this is just displayed here. This is a graph from the IMF, from a report that they created just a couple of months ago. And you can beautifully see here that, for example, economies like Saudi Arabia or the UAE are still dominated, if it comes to GDP, by oil-related activities. If you look at non-oil revenues, they have a still very low number here. So those economies, they heavily rely on natural resources. But the interesting aspect is that if we look into the future, or try to look into the future at least, then we will hopefully or probably see a shift that will happen. So the IMF and other analysts, they expect that growth in the Middle East will come not from oil-related activities anymore. The main growth drivers will be non-oil or non-natural resources related activities. This is beautifully seen here by this graph that also comes from the IMF. They predict that for the next couple of years, the main driver for growth actually here will be non-oil or non-natural resources related activities. So just to give you an overview, economies there will shift their focus. And this is something that more or less every analyst agrees on. And this is something that we at Hype already see. So the clients that we are working with, they try to expand their product portfolio, their service portfolio. They try to shift away from natural resources as good as they can right now. And they want to look into the future for new opportunities. Now, if we look at innovation, and specifically the innovation performance of organizations, there's an interesting picture that comes into our mind. So here we have a beautiful overview from the World Economic Forum. In 2013, they created a competitiveness report, and this basically matches our experience here at Hype. If you look at the innovation space in the Middle East, basically you have two pieces here that make the full picture. The first one is that there are organizations in the Middle East, and you can see this here in the top sector, that deliver world-class innovation performance. So there are organizations that already are heavily involved in innovation activities, that have a long history of innovation management, where all employees are actively engaged, and where actual business results are created. But if you look at the region itself, you see that in comparison to the European or Western societies, there's still a certain gap that needs to be filled. So you still see, for example, here in the Gulf region, there is a gap that companies and organizations in the Middle East and government entities want to close. And that is the important aspect here. So companies and governments, they need to recognize, as we said, that future growth will come from other industries, probably not natural resources, and there's a new cycle of innovation that they have to focus on and that they have to respond on rapidly. If we now look at the innovation environment, then we see an interesting picture here. So we see that some organizations in the Middle East, they perform very well, but the majority of organizations and the majority of societies, if it comes to innovative activities, they lack. There's a gap to Western societies and Western economies, and that gap actually, there's a reason why this gap is in place. And let me just describe you the innovation environment that we have been exposed to and that we have actually seen in the Middle East. First of all, what we have seen is that a lot of organizations in the Middle East, if they run systemized innovation programs, they usually have in-house portals or in-house applications that they use. So the history here is that around a decade ago, some organizations started to develop their own applications, their own software coming out of the IT. And even today, a lot of organizations in the Middle East stick to those applications. And as maybe some of you know, in-house applications, they have certain downsides. Usually it comes to maintaining those applications, that this becomes a difficulty, extending functionalities and updating them to more modern technological standards. This becomes usually a pain, and organizations have difficulties to handle that. We have seen that nowadays still a lot of organizations rely on those in-house solutions. Second of all, and this is an interesting positive aspect, what we have seen is that in the organizations that we have been working with, actually the top management in those organizations is already standing behind innovation activities and innovation programs. And this is actually a positive development, and we were a little bit surprised actually to see this. In Western organizations, we sometimes encounter the situation that it becomes difficult to convince top management that innovation programs have a certain benefit in them, that they should be rolled out company-wide, that an organization should focus on managing their innovation professionally. In the Middle East, it's actually the other way around. We have seen a lot of organizations where the initiatives were really driven, in the majority of cases, by the top management. Top management is really standing behind those activities, and this is also related to the fact that organizations want to shift their focus. They want to shift their growth strategies, and they have understood that innovation and innovation management is a key, essential strategic part of that strategy. Next element would be mobile. We have seen that mobile is a big topic in the Middle East, and this might be already something that you know. So the penetration rate of smartphones and tablets and other mobile devices is pretty high in the Middle East. The usage of social networks, of modern communication tools and mechanisms is very common among the population in the Middle East. I think it's one of the highest penetration rates that you have in the world, and one of the highest activity levels that you see. And this is, of course, related to political movements, and also related to the fact that you have a lot of young people living in those countries, and we will get to this in a second. But mobile is a very important topic there. Companies already tackle this nowadays. They try to focus on it, but because we have those in-house solutions, in a lot of cases this is not feasible, or it becomes a huge pain to develop mobile applications that are working with innovation applications or platforms. Last but not least, what we have seen, and this was also interesting for us, a lot of companies already have a long history of innovation or innovation management. So the majority of companies have already started a decade ago or just a couple of years ago activities there, but they do it on a very low level. So there are certain activities, but they are not maybe focused enough on specific targets, or they don't deliver the real value that top management is looking for. So there is a history in place often, but sometimes there is no connection to business targets or to goals that top management has defined. And this is the current state that we have encountered in the Middle East. So some positive elements, some negative elements from our point of view, something that in some cases we have to tackle and we have to address. Good. So if we come to cultural aspects, what do companies do nowadays, and what should they do maybe in the future? Actually, two aspects became visible to us while working in the last 5 years with companies. Their main activity is focused nowadays on cost-saving initiatives and process optimizations. While there's nothing to say against that, cost-saving initiatives and process optimization initiatives make total sense, and of course they should be continuously covered. They still sometimes don't deliver the value that organizations need at a specific point in time. Sometimes you need some strategic answers, or sometimes you need some solutions to business challenges that you currently face. And cost-saving content or cost-saving ideas and process optimization ideas sometimes don't really tackle the real problems that an organization is facing. And that is something that we have seen the Middle East is lacking a little bit behind. So on the one side, we have limited collaborative elements in innovation programs. So there's no real focus on collaboration. Collaboration is not promoted actively in organizations. So it's a traditional cost-saving and process optimization structure. Collaboration actually works very well if it comes to solving business challenges, if it comes to getting the value that you're really looking for. So we try to help our customers to focus more on collaboration, and we see that this is something that organizations in the Middle East need to actually put more emphasis on. Another point is that what we have seen is that innovation programs often lack a certain strategic focus. As I said, cost-saving process optimization efforts are often focused on, but these are not, in the majority of cases, the real business issues that a company is facing. So especially nowadays where the shift is happening towards new products, new services, expanding the product and service portfolio, often companies want to get those kinds of ideas from their employees or from other audiences. But this needs to be managed properly, this needs to be planned properly. The whole innovation program has to have a certain foundation, especially a strategic foundation, and that is often not in place at the moment. We have helped the organizations that we are working with to actually get that kind of focus, to tie their innovation programs with the need that top management usually has. So, based on those experiences, we now see certain movements and certain developments happening. First of all, as we said, future growth will come probably from other sectors than natural resources, and in those sectors, growth will mainly come from innovative ideas. And what we see and what other organizations like PricewaterhouseCoopers see is that the investments in innovation are currently being ramped up. So companies are really focusing now to invest money, to invest resources, to focus on innovative-driven growth. And that is something that we have seen in working with organizations in the Middle East, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, who did a really nice study on that. They have analyzed this in a very detailed way, and they are saying, as one of their results, is that 80% of customers that they have worked with are saying, well, we want to spend more money and more resources on innovation management. And this is exactly matching our experience here. So companies are really taking this seriously nowadays, and they want to be more innovative than they have been in the past. So our prediction is that actually in the next 12 to 24 months, this will continually grow, and that the Middle East will have some sort of leadership here in the world. If we compare the attention and the investment that is happening now in the region, this is by far overpassing other regions in the Western world and in Asia. And again, PricewaterhouseCoopers did some analysis here, and they came to the same results as we did. And they also, and there's an interesting fact that we can agree on, a lot of companies are looking for radical and breakthrough innovation. So that is something that we have seen in clients or with clients that we have been working with. Companies, they want to break out of their traditional product and service portfolio. They want to think about really new radical ideas, something that is not covered right now, something that is maybe completely new to the organization, something that we have been working on with clients in the Middle East. So this is one development that is currently happening. Future growth will really be innovation driven, and companies are focusing on that. Second of all, companies are really looking for harnessing the knowledge that is available, and there are certain reasons for that. First of all, and I just briefly mentioned it, a lot of people in the Middle East are in a young demographic. So 2/3 actually of the population, it varies a little bit from country to country, but on average around 60 to 70% are below 30 years, which is very unique. You will not find this in a lot of other countries in the world or areas in the world, especially not in the Western societies. And due to that, the usage of technology and social media, as I said, is really a common thing. It is not something that is new to people. They are used to interact with colleagues or with friends, with families through technology and social media. So collaboration and the collaborative mindset, that is something that is, what we have seen, is already in place. This is not something that is new to employees or citizens. It is something that they are used to, that they are living up to, and for them it's day-to-day business. They use Facebook, Instagram and Twitter and all those other social networks on a daily basis. It is really a common behavior for them to communicate through technology. And the interesting thing is that those people actually expect that kind of environment at their workplace, and they expect that from governments. So they expect that actually they are listened to, that collaboration is taken seriously at the workplace, that the organization maybe interacts with them in a very deep way, and they expect that even from governments. And organizations and governments are somehow listening to them at the moment. So we see that government entities in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and so on, they want to involve their audiences. They want to involve their citizens in their activities. So there's a huge demand for actually open innovation programs, which is my third point here. So we see that companies and organizations actually look for collaborative initiatives. They want to harness that knowledge, they want people to connect, and they want to do it internally and externally. So we see a huge demand for open innovation activities, something that we support fully. We think this is a great development, and we see this in the private and in the public sector. Great. So I think it's time for the first question here. So I would like to ask you a simple question. I would kindly ask you just to spend a couple of seconds on that, and we will be back in a couple of seconds. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. So let me just close this question. Great. So this was our first chapter. Just a brief overview. What are the economic conditions? What is the experience that Hype gathered in the Middle East, working in the Middle East? And I would like to talk a little bit about employees, about citizens, about people, and how we can actually motivate people to take part in innovation activities to, in the end, deliver the business value that organizations and governments are looking for. And this is a really interesting topic here. So if we want to talk about motivational aspects, if we want to talk about aspects that really drive people to collaborate, to interact, to submit ideas, submit comments, we really have to think about social science a little bit. And the natural answer to motivation is, well, usually incentives work. So maybe physical incentives or financial incentives. But the topic of motivation is a little bit more complex. And there are actually more motivational aspects than somebody would intuitively think about. So what we have found out is that one important aspect is recognition. And we will talk about this in a second in a more detailed way. Next to recognition, the natural desire to help. That is something that innovation managers should keep in mind, and of course organizations. So people, independent of being in the Middle East or in other areas of the world, as human beings, we have a natural desire to help other human beings. And that is something that we could focus on and we could utilize in the context of innovation initiatives. Third aspect would be the belief in the process. So if I, as an employee or maybe as a citizen of a country, if I want to interact with other people, with other colleagues maybe, or with other citizens, if I want to share my knowledge, share my ideas, then I will probably only do that if I know that my ideas are looked at, that my ideas are being processed, that my comments maybe that I submit are leading to maybe replies, or that other people will read them. So if I don't believe into the process, if I don't believe that something will actually happen with my idea, with my contribution, I will probably not participate. Fourth point, a very interesting point actually, is a certain group dynamic and a certain dynamic among peers. So if I see that direct colleagues of mine, maybe in my office, or maybe friends of mine or family members, if I see that peers of mine are active in certain initiatives, maybe if they are innovation related or not, then this somehow influences me. So I might be interested to also take part in the same activities. And again, this is something that we can utilize, especially in the Middle East. And we will get to this in a second. The fifth point would be rewards. So this is something that really depends on the culture, and in the Middle East this works very well in certain environments. But generally speaking, this is a difficult topic, and we will talk about this in the context of the Middle East in a second. Last but not least, we have seen that simply asking people for help, actively asking people for help, is a real differentiator in innovation programs. And you can maybe understand this a little bit better if you think about yourself. So let's take an example where you are being called by somebody you don't know, and this person on the telephone asks you for something. Maybe they want to sell you something, maybe they ask you for your help, and you don't know this person. And therefore, well, this becomes for you not so interesting. You don't know this person, and therefore you will not actually listen to that. But if somebody who is well known to you asks you, somebody maybe from management, this becomes a different scenario, and this becomes now important in the majority of cases to you, because somebody you know, somebody who is maybe in this case higher in the hierarchy, or somebody who has a certain profile, asks you for support. And just by asking you, this will somehow motivate you to actually act. And we have seen this working very well. In the Middle East, some of those aspects play a really important role, others are not so important. So if we talk about motivation in the Middle East, the most dominant aspect that we have seen, and that we have seen working very fine in multiple organizations, is the recognition part. So employees in organizations and citizens generally in the Middle East are really focused on getting some sort of recognition if they are active, if they are conducting some work, if they are successful in their work. And recognition has a huge influence on people in the Middle East. If you give out awards, for example, if you in some other way recognize activities, successful activities of employees or citizens or participants in your innovation program, this has a huge influence on people in the Middle East. So we really recommend, if you run an innovation program or if you plan to run an innovation program, focus on recognition, on giving the right recognition at the right point in time, and maybe deliver a certain recognition strategy where you define recognition levels, where you define maybe some sort of awards that people are getting when they reach certain successes. This should be part of your communication and marketing strategy. It should be in place. This is something that people in the Middle East really expect. Second would actually be the request by management. What we have seen in clients that we have been working with is that this can be a huge differentiator. If you involve management from the beginning in your innovation activities, and if you define certain targets and certain questions maybe that management has, and really ask people actively, this has a huge influence on people to really participate and to submit ideas and the content that you're looking for. This can be very easily implemented, because what we have seen, at least in the clients we have been working with, is that this kind of support is already in place. Top management usually is really looking for innovative ideas for the reason that we have discussed previously. And to convince management to get them on board, it shouldn't be a big hurdle in the Middle East. That is something that we have experienced. In the end, management is looking for creative ideas, for creative content, for content that delivers the value that they are looking for. Third piece is actually seeing peers participating. This is really working well in the Middle East. So if you see that your colleague in your office is maybe submitting an idea or talking maybe about an idea, then we have seen that this directly influences you as an employee. And the interesting thing is here that we would recommend actually to talk to people who have this kind of influential power. So maybe you already know people who are very communicative, who are already running a huge private network, who are very well connected to other colleagues and other employees, and getting them on board really can make a difference in innovation programs. So people who have a huge network, who talk regularly about the innovation program that you are running or might want to run, getting those people involved in the program, so directly talking to them, directly maybe trying to get their support, can really make a difference in the results that you want to achieve. So we would recommend really a focus on this aspect, try to get those influencers on board if you can. And the fourth item, and this is the one that is the most controversial or the most critical one, is actually the rewards. We have seen that traditionally a lot of organizations in the Middle East, they give out huge rewards. So there are a huge financial rewards that can be achieved. But we really recommend to take this aspect or use this aspect really carefully, because it delivers a certain result that you might not want to get. Because in the end, if you give out huge rewards, huge prizes, this can lead to a different kind of activity, this can lead to a different kind of motivation. In the Middle East, the interesting aspect is that rewards are somehow expected. We have seen that programs who don't give out rewards at all, that those tend to fail or tend to struggle at least. So you have to keep this in mind if you are running an innovation program or want to run an innovation program, that the reward aspect, the physical or financial reward aspect, you have to tackle this to a certain level. But our experience is that you shouldn't focus too much on it. It shouldn't be the main motivator for people, and therefore you should give out rewards that are somehow acceptable, somehow not too high and not too low. And one interesting story I would like to share with you is an example from a client that we had, where the client gave out a reward for a single initiative. So the client had a single question in the context of the innovation program that he was running, and for this single initiative a prize was defined. And it was a very big prize, and the problem that happened afterwards was that after this initiative has ended, people expected those kinds of rewards for all the other initiatives that would follow. And this was not the case. So what happened was that, unfortunately, those initiatives that followed, they didn't achieve the value that the company was looking for, and they didn't really, and they weren't successful as they could have been maybe. So this is just one example that should, in the end, help you really to define rewards on a more program level. So if you want to give out rewards, think about rewards that maybe can be given out once a year or maybe once every 6 months on a program level, not for single initiatives. Great. So now I'd like to ask you a second question. Let me just start this here, and we will be back in a couple of seconds. Okay, I'll close the question now. Thank you for your participation here. Great. So, if I would like to recommend a strategy to tackle innovation management in the Middle East, 7 points are really important here. If you want to run a successful innovation program, or if you are planning to launch a program soon or maybe in the near future. First of all, systemize your innovation management activities. So, try to shift away from manual activities, from email or Excel-based activities. Try to utilize a platform that you run, and try to integrate an innovation platform into your IT environment. Let it talk to all the portals that you run. Maybe you have a SharePoint portal, maybe you have something that is similar to Jive or Yammer, some social networks that are already utilized in your organization. Then try to connect your innovation platform to those environments and try to reach out to as many audiences as possible. So systemizing innovation management, this is expected from people in the Middle East. Employees, they don't actually want to submit an email, they don't want to see their idea being maybe just mentioned in an Excel list. They want full transparency, they want to know what is happening, and a systemized innovation management platform actually delivers that. People can track the status, people can see what is happening with their content. Second of all, try to utilize as many recognition mechanisms as possible. So the three ones that I would always recommend would be give out innovation points. So when people submit an idea, when certain successes are being achieved, maybe an idea is getting implemented, try to give out points and let them exponentially grow. So just give out a few points for just basic activities and give out a lot of points for really great successes. So when ideas get implemented, maybe if those implemented ideas reach certain value levels, then they get more points than with other levels. So innovation points, again, something that people expect here. In some cases, you will see that applications will offer, or platforms will offer reputation mechanisms. They work also very, very well. So if you try to specify the reputation, the activities that people are doing on a profile level. So if you give out maybe badges for certain activities, logging on a certain amount of time, or maybe just submitting content a certain amount of time, the reputation aspect can really make a platform successful here, because again it motivates employees in the Middle East. Last but not least, rankings, they are important. People will try to analyze how good am I compared to my colleagues, how good am I compared to maybe other colleagues in the organization. So they will try to analyze their performance here. Third point would be involve your management. So the C-level and middle management here from the beginning on. If you can do that, if you can submit your plan or your strategy to your management and involve them from the beginning on, then this will be a great case. So this is our recommendation. All activities in your innovation program should be focused more or less on the demand that management has. Fourth point, try to identify those influencers. So try to get them on board. Try to have those people who have big networks work for you, and let them actually be a so-called innovation advocate for you. Let them advocate the program and the platform, I mean, sorry. Give out rewards, especially on the program level. So don't try to do that on a level that is focusing on individual initiatives. We really recommend to do this on a program level, and try to give out acceptable rewards. Don't let them be too high or too big, because they will actually motivate people in the wrong way, and they will lead to wrong behaviors in the end. Sixth point, use mobile ideation. So promote it if you can in your marketing and communication activities. Use it as often as you can. People, as I said, expect this in the Middle East. They are used to use mobile applications and collaborate and connect to peers through mobile platforms. So this will be a necessity, more or less. And seventh point, focus a little bit also on the cultural change that might happen and that might be the result of your activities. If you see that in your organization you have an innovation culture that is not so mature, then you should probably start with maybe tactical topics, maybe with something that is easy to solve, maybe something that everybody can contribute to. And then over the time you can be more adventurous. You can start to tackle the more strategic questions and more the questions that actually will influence every part of the organization. Great, so let me summarize the webinar today. So what have we seen, what have we talked about? First of all, what we've seen is that in the Middle East, growth in the future will come from innovation-related activities. And it is important here that you define a so-called innovation strategies together with your management. That is something that companies already do, and we always recommend to do that before you even start to talk about platforms and functionalities and so on. So the strategy is really the basis of all of your activities. Second of all, we have seen that collaboration is actually more or less expected from people. They are used to this in their private environment. We have a very young demographic in the Middle East, and this is something that is common to people, and this should come in together with the focus on business targets. So collaboration and all collaborative activities should, in the end, lead to business results that you are or your management is actually looking for. Third point, try to motivate your audience in the right way. Think about recognition mechanisms, think about involving your management from the beginning on, let them ask the questions, let them stand behind all activities. Try to identify those influencers if you can and involve them in your activities as good as possible, and think about rewards. As I said, rewards, a difficult topic. Try to start small if possible, and if you see that more rewards are really needed to drive participation, maybe you can expand this, but don't focus too much on them, because focusing primarily on rewards will lead to maybe wrong behaviors. And last but not least, the culture change is important here. So you should think about that in the long run, you might get a different kind of culture in the end, a different kind of social culture, and definitely a different kind of innovation culture. And this is something that you should tackle from the beginning on. And this should be part of your innovation strategy. So you should have a strategy that fits to your innovation culture and that actually has the culture change embedded into it. Great, so this actually would be the end of my presentation. How can we help you, generally speaking? If you are maybe looking for case studies, then they are available here on our website. We run a couple of Innovation Managers Forum. One is usually held here in Bonn, here at our headquarters in Germany. This is one where we invite all of our customers and interested organizations here to Germany to visit us for 2 days. We also run local events. Diana just mentioned a couple of them in the beginning. And if you maybe need strategic support, so if you need support to maybe align your innovation program to your organization strategy, if your program is already running or if you are currently designing it, then we are here to help you. If you are looking for the right communication or marketing strategies, and if you are looking for executing an innovation program properly, we are here to help you. Please just contact us. Great, so this would be actually the end, and we will get now to questions that we have here. So I have one question that I might want to tackle now. Great, so we have one question. What are typical tactical campaigns in the Middle East? Okay, so that is a very interesting question. So if you see that you need to start tactical, if you see that you really need to start with topics that everybody can relate to, everybody maybe has the knowledge to answer this challenge, then maybe I can give you 2 or 3 examples that might be relevant for you. So something that we have seen in the Middle East that works very well are, if it comes to technical campaigns, you should think about campaigns that really relate to everybody in the organization. And even if you just start them on a local level, everybody in the department that you roll it out, or maybe then in the whole organization, should relate to that. So a typical topic would be, for example, how to optimize the parking situation. So we have seen this, a lot of people in the Middle East drive a car, and this can be a problem on the workplace. So if you come by car, the parking situation is often problematic. And this could be a great campaign for you to start with. So This is something that probably the majority of people can relate to, and probably everybody more or less can have an answer to. A second topic that just recently worked very well with a client of ours was to optimize the onboarding process. So if you are a new employee, if you start at the organization, maybe the process takes a long time to get your maybe a network access, maybe to get your IDs, to get any kind of documents you need. And one organization wanted to tackle this. This organization wanted to make this experience wanted to make this a great experience, wanted to change the current status where things took too long and things simply weren't efficient enough. And they actually just asked for ideas how to optimize this onboarding process. And they got very good results because at the end, everybody was a new employee at some point. Great, so we are at the end of our time here. I would like to thank everybody for taking part in my webinar today, and I hope to see you in the next webinar. Thank you.